Devon, and I texted maybe it was 2. Anyway, I loved the soup, and she said, "Oh, if you want good soup, come to my house." And we did, and she made the best soup I have tasted, a hot and sour soup. It just was so good, and I have never found it anywhere. And then one of the other memories is when Mountain Moving had its 25th anniversary. It was at a church, and there were like 25 steps up. And as I went up one flight of steps, on the opposite side, Kuda was coming up the other side, each of us with a cane, and each of us equally frustrated by being seen in public with a cane and needing the cane. And we stood there and we laughed and laughed, because never in my life did I expect her to be on the other side and vice versa. But all of them are so personal, and my feeling for her was that I'm so lucky that she was a mentor. I know that we fought a great deal, and I also know that I miss her, even if, you know, it's hard to explain. It's just that that person that was a force is gone. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's pretty appropriate that someone who's pretty much a bit player in all this drama should presumably take up the rear here. I was a graduate student at University of Illinois in 1978. Yes, I dye my hair. And
at least you have it.
Thank you, Jim. That's a good point. And I was the star student of the tiny, tiny anthropology department, and did not come out until I announced my thesis topic, which was an exploration of how gay and lesbian couples created an identity for themselves in the absence of access to legal marriage. Thank God we wouldn't have to write this today. And Marie Kuda had published a bibliography. I don't see many millennials here, so you all can appreciate the power of a bibliography at that time. There were no gay books for sale at Borders. Okay, that's dating myself. There's no brick and mortar stores. There were a tiny collection at Women and Children First, but that bibliography gave me access to resources in a way that I would have never otherwise had. So fast forward, it must have been the 90s when I met you, Jim. And Jim Edminster, who knows everyone, introduced me to Marie Kuda. I was like, oh my God, in the flesh. I didn't fall down and worship, but it was pretty close. And of course, I've got an immediate crush, but I would have had to stand in line for that. So it's just a wonderful memory of the power of what she did for the lesbian community that will live on through all of us, and hopefully through the next generation.
I don't mean to step on your toes, but there's one thing I just think you should all know, that the gentleman who was just up here a little while ago, Mr. Guy Warner, used to hang out at my bar, along with Kuda and everybody else. And Kuda had this wonderful idea that we should talk to gay parents of gay children.
Oh, yes.
And we had meetings with them, and I would drag one of my friends that was in the hospital business, an entertainer, me as a bar owner, and we would kind of counsel these people. And out of that grew P-Flag. So it was Guy Warner, me, and Kuda who tried to make this work.
Okay, we'll definitely have time for people to share stories, and I wanted to share a little bit about my memories of Kuda. I probably met her probably in 1984 when I started working for Chuck Runslow at Gay Life newspaper. And Chuck, when I called him to tell him that Kuda had died, his response was just, oh no. He had a great love for Kuda as well. She was a tough cookie, and she built my skin very thick over the years. And you know, she always said that I was quantity over quality. That was her favorite phrase about me. You know what, I'm like, I got to put out a weekly newspaper. There's going to be mistakes. And she certainly appreciated it, but that was a lot of the core of our fights over time. I've never missed a deadline in 32 years of a weekly newspaper. So, but you know what? To me, it was always Kuda and Kelly. Kuda and Kelly. Bill Kelly, who passed away last year, Chen is here, and Kuda. Like, they were the anchors, the pillars of the movement that I knew and came into in 1984. There were thousands of other people that helped lay that groundwork to make it possible for me to be doing this for 32 years. But Kuda and Kelly, it was Kuda and Kelly. I'd look in the old archives of Mattachine or The Paper or Lavender Woman or Gay Crusade or all those publications, and it was Kuda and Kelly, and with their names. I didn't have to remember what pseudonym they were using that year. I always knew it was Kuda and Kelly. They did not treat me like we may treat the millennials. I was a lot younger, and they did not treat me differently for that. Many people in this room were like that too. That my age wasn't a barrier to accepting me into the community. When I started working with Kuda, she started writing, certainly she already had been writing for Gay Life, and she wrote for me at Outlines and Windy City Times and such. But a few years ago, we started to work on projects together that were more books, right? Out and Proud in Chicago, which we have a copy up here. And Kuda was, as was mentioned, if she had been born 20 years later, she would have been in an entirely different era of respect, pay, pensions, health care, everything. And so when we started working on these projects, she did it begrudgingly, because she's like, well, first of all, it's not going to be accepted by any academic because you're not an academic, Tracy. And that was okay. John D'Amelio told me that too. I said, but somebody's got to put it down in paper and also in digital form so that for the next generation, we know they're not going to go to the libraries and the archives as much. They need to see it in digital form. So, begrudgingly, and on a quick deadline, we had 3 months to put that book out in Proud in Chicago. Georgette Harper, Bill Kelly, and dozens of writers. But Kuda was key to the early era, and she didn't want to do it. She did not want to do it. She's like, we can't do it this fast. No way can we do this. This is not a newspaper. This is a book. And finally, when that book came out, and she didn't want her name on the cover. I'm trying to remember if I
Is that right? She didn't want her name on the cover?
She didn't let me put her name on the cover. I had to go back and look to make sure. I'm like, Kuda, you wrote like 20% of these articles. She's like, no, I don't. It's going to be an embarrassment. But she let me put her name on most of her articles in there. And when it came out, she kept ordering more copies and more copies because it, I think, was among the proudest things she was ever part of. And her name is in that legacy. And then when we did a few other books, it was, it was a little bit easier to get her to participate. She has some great essays in the book Gay Press, Gay Power about her role in gay media and gay history. So I would definitely recommend that. It's a lot more about Kuda's history as opposed to Out and Proud Chicago's about Chicago history. And a lot of her slideshow work went into the Out and Proud Chicago book. But the final project, well, first of all, I'm hoping to do a collection of her essays. Cheryl and I will work on this. If people want to donate money to have people typeset and edit and put it together, it won't cost more than a couple $1,000s. So we should be able to put it together in the next 16 or 18 months. I'm not going to try to do it next week, out of respect for Kuda. But the last project that was really inspired by Kuda, and I owe a great debt of gratitude, is my book on Barbara Giddings. Would absolutely not have happened without Kuda introducing me to Barbara's widow a few years ago, Kayla Husin. And Kayla Husin is in Pennsylvania now. She certainly sends her regrets not being able to be here. But Kay wanted someone to work on a biography of Barbara because when Barbara was alive, they were never able to have the time. They kept sharing themselves with everybody else, just like Kuda, and never had the time to do their own work, their own biography. So I got a chance to meet Kay. She vetted me through Kuda. Kuda actually said I could do it, which was, the Kuda seal of approval meant so much to me, but it meant even more to Kay that she would trust me to tell Barbara's legacy. So I owe that entire book. It would never, ever have happened had Kuda not recommended me to Kay. So much of what I have been able to do as an openly lesbian journalist in Chicago is because of Marie Kuda, Bill Kelly, and a few dozen of those other people that worked their hearts out, pasting up the boards in the 1970s and typesetting and delivering and doing all of that work. We have to make sure that this next generation understands the sacrifices those people made. Kuda's life was made miserable in the end, physically in part because of the lack of support she received as a professional doing the work that she did. So we have a lot of work to do on our LGBT seniors who are still with us that need that help, as well as our youth that are coming up. And let's remember to do that in Kuda's name. I'm hoping that a lot of her archives are at Kinsey and some of the poetry is at Tucson, but Carrie's here from Gerhart Library. I have about 12 to 15 boxes of Kuda stuff still, the duplicates that didn't make it to those places. So we will have some of Kuda's photos and other materials at the Gerhart Library, and we will also pull together the essays and such into a book available at Gerhart and freely at other places as well. So we will make sure that she is not forgotten, like the people she made sure before her were not forgotten. Thank you. This is wonderful turnout. Thank you so much for coming today.
I keep thinking of more stories.
And we have a lot of food, so please come eat, come look at the photos, and if you haven't gotten the bookmark, we have plenty of bookmarks left, and take some for people that you know that might want them.